My 300-pound fiancé sat me down and told me I needed to lose weight for our wedding photos because he wants to be proud of his bride. So I took off my ring and said I was losing weight today. I met Dennis at a work conference 4 years ago. He was funny and confident and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. He was a big guy, and I never cared about that. I thought bodies were just bodies, and what mattered was how someone treated you. I weighed 140 pounds when we started dating. I was a size 6. Dennis told me constantly how beautiful I was. He said he could not believe someone like me wanted to be with someone like him. We got engaged after 2 years together. Dennis proposed at the restaurant where we had our first date. He got down on one knee and cried real tears and said he wanted to spend the rest of his life making me happy. I said yes because I loved him, and I thought he loved me exactly as I was. The wedding planning started immediately. Dennis had opinions about everything. He wanted a specific venue and a specific caterer and a specific band. He wanted the colors to be navy and gold. He wanted the guest list to include people I had never even heard of. I let him make most of the decisions because he seemed so excited, and I wanted him to have the wedding of his dreams. Then we booked the photographer. Dennis spent 3 hours looking at different photography packages online. He studied sample wedding albums like he was preparing for an exam. He made spreadsheets comparing prices and styles and editing options. I thought it was sweet that he cared so much about capturing our special day. The night after we paid the deposit, Dennis sat me down at the kitchen table. He said he wanted to talk about something important. He said he had been thinking about the photos and how we would look in them. He said he wanted our wedding album to be something we could be proud of for the rest of our lives. I agreed. I said I wanted that too. Then Dennis said I needed to lose weight. He said the camera added 10 pounds and he did not want me to look heavy in our pictures. He said 30 pounds should be enough. He said the wedding was 8 months away, so I had plenty of time if I started immediately. He said he already researched some diet plans and gym memberships that might work for me. I sat there trying to understand what just happened. I asked him to repeat what he said. He repeated it like it was the most reasonable request in the world. He said he just wanted me to look my best. He said brides were supposed to glow on their wedding day, and losing a little weight would help me glow brighter. He said he was only saying this because he loved me and wanted the best for both of us. I asked Dennis if he was planning to lose weight too. He laughed. He actually laughed like I made a joke. He said that was different. He said grooms did not have to worry about how they looked in photos the same way brides did. He said everyone would be looking at me anyway, so it only made sense for me to put in the effort. He said he would look fine in his tuxedo because tuxedos were designed to be flattering on all body types. I pointed out that he weighed 300 pounds. I pointed out that I weighed 140. I pointed out that by any standard, I was not the one in this relationship who needed to lose weight. Dennis got defensive. He said I was missing the point. He said this was not about health, it was about aesthetics. He said brides were expected to look a certain way, and I was not meeting that expectation. He said his mother agreed with him. He said his mother thought I could stand to tone up before the wedding. I asked when he discussed my body with his mother. He said they talked about it last week when they were looking at my old photos together. He said his mother noticed I had gained a few pounds since we started dating, and she thought the wedding was a good motivation to get back in shape. I had not gained any weight. I weighed exactly the same as the day we met. I still ran 3 miles every morning. I still did yoga twice a week. Nothing about my body had changed except apparently how Dennis and his mother saw it. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just sat there looking at this man I had agreed to marry and realizing I did not know him at all. I asked Dennis one more question. I asked if he would still want to marry me if I did not lose the weight. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. He said he would still marry me, but he might be disappointed. He said he just wanted to be proud of his bride. He said he hoped I would not be selfish about this. I took off my engagement ring and put it on the table between us. Dennis stared at it like he did not understand what it meant. He asked what I was doing. I said I was losing weight. He looked confused. He asked how much. I said about 180 pounds. It took him a few seconds to realize I was talking about him. His eyes stayed on that ring like it was something he'd never seen before. The diamond caught the kitchen light and threw tiny rainbows across the table surface. I watched him process what I'd said, saw his face move through confusion, and then something that looked like panic. He opened his mouth twice before any sound came out. When he finally spoke, his voice had gone up half an octave, tight and sharp in a way I'd never heard from him before. He asked if I was being serious right now. I told him I had never been more serious about anything in my entire life. I needed him to leave our apartment tonight so I could think clearly without him sitting across from me trying to explain why asking me to lose 30 pounds was actually reasonable. He leaned back in his chair hard enough that it scraped against the floor. He said his name was on the lease just like mine was. He said this was his home too and he wasn't going anywhere. I stood up and grabbed my purse off the counter. My keys were right where I always left them in the little bowl by the microwave. I picked them up and they felt heavier than normal in my hand. I walked toward the door and Dennis called after me asking where I thought I was going. I didn't answer him. I just opened the door and walked out into the hallway and kept walking until I got to my car. The drive to Felicia's apartment took 20 minutes but felt like hours. Every stoplight seemed to last forever. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept replaying what Dennis had said about the camera adding 10 pounds and how he wanted to be proud of his bride. The words kept looping in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. I pulled into Felicia's parking lot at 9 p.m. and sat in my car for a full minute before I could make myself move. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, and I took the stairs instead of the elevator because I needed something to do with my body. I knocked on her door and she opened it wearing pajama pants and an old college sweatshirt. She took one look at my face and stepped aside without saying anything. She pulled me inside and closed the door behind me. Her apartment smelled like the vanilla candles she always bought from the farmer's market. She guided me to her couch and disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the sound of her filling the kettle and turning on the stove. She came back with 2 mugs and a box of tea bags and sat down next to me. I started talking, and once I started, I couldn't stop. I told her everything Dennis had said about my weight and the photos and his mother agreeing with him. I told her about the hesitation when I asked if he'd still marry me. I told her about taking off the ring. Felicia didn't interrupt once. She just sat there listening and refilling my tea when the mug got empty. I woke up on Felicia's couch the next morning with my neck stiff and my phone buzzing on the coffee table. The screen showed 17 missed calls from Dennis. I scrolled through a dozen text messages that started with apologies and ended with accusations. One message said I was overreacting to a simple suggestion. Another said he was just trying to help me be my best self. A third one mentioned his mother and how she only wanted what was good for us. I put the phone face down on the table and pressed my palms against my eyes. Felicia came out of her bedroom wearing different pajamas and asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes, even though I normally didn't drink coffee. She made it in her French press and handed me a mug that said, "Nevertheless, she persisted," in white letters. I sat there holding the warm mug and staring at my phone like it might explode. Dennis sent 3 more texts while I watched. The first said we needed to talk about this like adults. The second said I was being childish. The third said his mother was very upset. I turned off my phone completely and drank my coffee. Felicia made scrambled eggs and toast for breakfast, and we sat at her small kitchen table. She asked me what I wanted to do, and I realized I had no idea. She started making a list on a paper napkin with a pen from her junk drawer. She wrote down, bank account first, then landlord and lawyer maybe, and figure out what you actually want. She underlined that last one twice. She said I needed to get my own bank account before Dennis did something stupid with our shared money. She said I needed to talk to the landlord about the lease situation. She said I needed to figure out what I actually wanted before Dennis wore me down with his explanations and apologies. I looked at her list and felt something shift in my chest. I realized I had been making myself smaller in every way to fit what Dennis and his mother wanted. I had let him pick the venue and the caterer and the band and the colors. I had laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I had agreed to things I didn't want because he seemed so sure about what he wanted. I was done shrinking. I told Felicia I was done shrinking, and she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I went back to the apartment at 11 a.m. when I knew Dennis would be at work. His car wasn't in the parking lot, but I still felt nervous turning my key in the lock. The apartment looked exactly the same as when I'd left it. The dishes from dinner were still in the sink. The engagement ring was still on the kitchen table exactly where I'd put it. I stared at that ring for a long time. The diamond looked smaller in the daylight. I wondered how I'd ever thought it was beautiful. I went into the bedroom and pulled 2 suitcases out of the closet. I packed clothes first, enough for a week or maybe 2. Then I packed my laptop and my running shoes and the photos of my family that sat on my nightstand. I grabbed my yoga mat from the corner and my favorite coffee mug from the kitchen cabinet. I took the books from my bedside table and the journal I'd been writing in since college. I looked around the apartment one more time and realized how little of it was actually mine. The furniture was Dennis's from his old place. The artwork on the walls was stuff his mother had picked out. The only things that were truly mine fit into 2 suitcases. I zipped them both closed and walked out without looking back at the ring on the table. I was loading the second suitcase into my car when Dennis's sedan pulled into the parking lot. He parked next to me and got out before I could close my trunk. He asked what I was doing, and I said I was getting some of my things. He said we needed to talk about this like adults. I told him we could talk after I'd had space to process what he'd asked of me. He stepped closer and said I was being unreasonable. He said he'd been thinking about it all night and he realized he might have phrased things wrong, but his point was still valid. He said brides were supposed to want to look their best on their wedding day. He said he was just trying to help me achieve my goals. I told him I never had a goal to lose 30 pounds. I told him the only goal I had right now was to get away from him so I could think. He said thinking was exactly the problem. He said I was overthinking a simple conversation and turning it into some big dramatic thing. He said if I would just listen to his explanation, I would understand he was coming from a place of love. I closed my trunk and got in my car. Dennis stood there in the parking lot talking through my closed window. I could see his mouth moving, but I couldn't hear the words anymore. I started the engine and backed out of my parking space while he was still standing there. My sister Imogen called me that afternoon and I told her everything. She got quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Then she said she was getting in her car right now and she'd be at Felicia's apartment in 3 hours. I told her she didn't need to do that. But she said yes, she absolutely did need to do that. She showed up exactly 3 hours later driving her pickup truck with the extended cab. She hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe for a second. Then she asked if I had a key to the apartment still and I said yes. And she said good, because we were going to get the rest of my stuff right now. We drove to the apartment in her truck, and Dennis's car was gone again. Imogen didn't waste time looking around or asking questions. She just started loading boxes. She grabbed my winter clothes from the closet and my kitchen stuff from the cabinets. She packed up my desk and my bookshelf and the lamp I'd bought at a garage sale 3 years ago. The whole time she was muttering under her breath about men who think women exist to look good in their photos. She said things like 300 pounds and the nerve and his mother can go to hell. Her anger on my behalf made me feel less crazy for leaving. It made me feel like maybe I wasn't overreacting after all. The bank was busy on Tuesday morning, but I waited in line anyway. When I got to the front, the woman behind the counter asked how she could help me, and I said I needed to open a new checking account. She pulled up the forms on her computer and asked for my information. She didn't ask why I was opening a new account or where the money was coming from. She just processed the paperwork like it was the most normal thing in the world. I transferred half of our shared savings into my new account. The number on the screen was smaller than I wanted, but bigger than I'd feared. Signing those papers felt scary and right at the same time. The representative printed out my temporary checks and my new debit card and handed them across the counter. I walked out of the bank feeling like I'd just taken the first real step toward something. I didn't know what that something was yet, but it felt like independence. Dennis showed up at Felicia's apartment on Wednesday evening without calling first. I was sitting on her couch eating leftover Chinese food when I heard him knock. Felicia looked through the peephole and mouthed his name at me. I shook my head and she nodded. She opened the door but kept the chain lock on. I could hear Dennis through the gap asking to talk to me somewhere private. Felicia told him I would contact him when I was ready, and he needed to respect my space. Dennis's voice got louder. He said this was ridiculous and I was manipulated by my friends. He said Felicia was turning me against him. Felicia said that wasn't how any of this worked and he needed to leave now. Dennis said something else I couldn't hear clearly. Then I heard a loud thud like someone kicked something hard. Felicia closed the door and locked it and came back to the couch. She said he kicked her doorframe hard enough to leave a mark. We sat there listening to his footsteps get quieter as he walked away. I met with the landlord on Thursday afternoon in her office on the first floor of the building. She was a woman in her 50s who wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She pulled up my lease on her computer and asked what the situation was. I explained that my fiancé and I had broken up and one of us needed to move out. She nodded like she'd heard this story 100 times before. She said she was sorry I was going through this, but the lease didn't end until 4 more months from now. She said both Dennis and I were legally responsible for the rent until then. She said if one of us wanted to move out early, we'd need to find someone to take over our half of the lease. She said she'd need to approve any new tenant, but she'd work with us to make it happen. I thanked her and walked back upstairs feeling like at least I had a practical goal now. I needed to find someone to take over my half of the lease. That was something concrete I could focus on, instead of just feeling stuck in this weird space between my old life and whatever came next. I went back to work on Monday and tried to act normal. Otto stopped by my desk around 10 in the morning with a coffee for himself and asked if I wanted to grab lunch later. I said sure because saying no would have made things weird. We walked to the sandwich place 2 blocks from the office and sat at a table by the window. Otto asked how the wedding planning was going, and I felt my stomach drop. He saw me and Dennis together at the company holiday party last December. Dennis had his arm around me all night and kept telling anyone who would listen that he was marrying up. I took a bite of my sandwich to buy time before answering. I told Otto there was some wedding stress, but nothing we couldn't handle. My voice sounded fake even to me. Otto nodded and changed the subject to a project deadline coming up next week. He didn't push for details, and I was grateful. Walking back to the office, I realized how many people at work knew Dennis and would ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. My phone buzzed during a meeting Tuesday afternoon. Dennis sent a text saying his mother wanted to meet with me to clear up this misunderstanding. He said she could help us get back on track. I stared at the message until someone asked me a question about the quarterly report, and I had to pretend I'd been paying attention. After the meeting, I went to the bathroom and read the text again. I knew exactly whose idea it was that I lose weight. Dennis didn't come up with that on his own. He'd been talking to his mother about my body for weeks, or maybe months. I blocked her number before I could talk myself out of it. I didn't need her explanations or her manipulation. Dennis sent 3 more texts asking why I wasn't responding to his mother. I turned my phone face down on my desk and tried to focus on work. The wedding planner called Wednesday morning. Her voice was cheerful and professional as she asked about confirming final guest counts. I closed my office door before telling her we were canceling everything. The cheerfulness disappeared from her voice. She said she understood and these things happened. Then she explained we would lose most of our deposits. The venue required 90 days notice for a full refund and we were past that. The caterer kept half no matter what. The band kept their deposit too. The photographer was the only one willing to refund us minus a processing fee. I did quick math in my head while she talked. We were losing over $8,000. I told her to go ahead and cancel everything anyway. She said she'd send the paperwork by email and she was sorry things didn't work out. After I hung up, I sat at my desk feeling sick about the money but knowing it was worth it. $8,000 to escape a marriage built on conditional acceptance seemed like a bargain. Felicia called Thursday evening and said I should talk to someone professional. She said friends were great, but I needed real support to process everything that happened. She'd already looked up therapists who took my insurance and found one named Maya Lindsay who had appointments available next week. I made the appointment while Felicia was still on the phone because I knew I'd talk myself out of it otherwise. The first session was the following Tuesday at 4. Maya's office was in a building downtown with a waiting room that smelled like lavender. She was younger than I expected, with dark hair pulled back in a bun. She asked me to describe what I thought my marriage would be like. I started talking about the wedding and the house we planned to buy and the kids we might have someday. Maya listened without interrupting. Then she asked what I thought daily life would be like with Dennis. I opened my mouth to answer and realized I'd imagined constantly trying to meet standards that would keep shifting to keep me insecure. I would have spent my whole marriage wondering if I was thin enough or pretty enough or good enough. Maya wrote something in her notebook and asked how that made me feel. I said it made me feel sad that I almost signed up for that life. Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Dennis forwarded me a message his mother left on his phone. I listened to it while sitting in my car in the work parking lot. Her voice was sharp and angry. She said I was selfish and immature for throwing away a good man over helpful suggestions. She said Dennis deserved better than someone who couldn't take constructive criticism. She said I was making a huge mistake. Then her voice changed to something almost sweet as she talked about how comfortable I'd gotten in the relationship. She said she told Dennis months ago that I'd let myself go after the wedding if I wasn't careful now. She said she was only trying to prevent that from happening. The message was 2 minutes long. I listened to it twice, trying to understand how someone could think this way. She'd been criticizing me to Dennis for months, calling me comfortable, predicting I'd gain weight, planting seeds that grew into his request that I lose 30 pounds. I deleted the message and felt angry in a way I hadn't before. Saturday morning, I met Felicia for coffee and told her about the voicemail. She got mad on my behalf and said some things about Dennis's mother that made me laugh for the first time in days. Then she told me something she'd heard from a mutual friend. Dennis was telling people I left him without warning over a minor disagreement about wedding planning. His version made me sound unstable. He was playing the victim and making himself sound blindsided. I felt my face get hot. Felicia asked if I wanted to tell people the truth. I said yes immediately. Then I thought about it more. Maya had said something in our session about focusing on my own healing instead of managing other people's narratives. I didn't want to spend my energy defending myself to people who might believe Dennis anyway. Felicia said that was probably smart, but she'd personally tell anyone who asked that Dennis was full of it. Sunday afternoon, Felicia called with good news. Her boyfriend knew someone looking for an apartment. The guy needed a place starting next month and was interested in taking over my half of the lease. I called the landlord and explained the situation. She said she'd need to run a credit check on the new tenant, but it sounded promising. I texted Dennis that I'd found someone to take over my half of the lease. He called immediately. His voice was loud and angry. He said I was abandoning our home. He said I was giving up on us. He said I wasn't even trying to work things out. I waited until he stopped talking. Then I told him he abandoned our relationship when he made his love conditional on my dress size. He said that wasn't fair. I said it was completely fair and hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt good about standing up for myself. Monday night, I couldn't sleep, so I got up and looked through old photos on my laptop. I found pictures from when Dennis and I first started dating 4 years ago. There was one from the work conference where we met, another from our third date at a baseball game, one from the weekend we drove to the beach 6 months in. I looked exactly the same as I did now. Same face, same body, same size. The evidence that I hadn't gained any weight made his request even more insulting. He wasn't reacting to any actual change. He was preemptively controlling me, trying to prevent some imaginary future where I might stop meeting his standards. Or maybe he'd always had these thoughts and just waited until we were engaged to say them out loud. Either way, it proved I made the right choice. I closed my laptop and went back to bed and actually slept. Dennis texted Wednesday asking to meet for coffee to discuss dividing our things. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my office Thursday afternoon. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the back. He stood up when he saw me like he was going to hug me, but I sat down quickly. He sat back down and started talking immediately. He said he didn't mean it the way I took it. He said he was just nervous about the photos because weddings were expensive and he wanted everything perfect. He said the photographer cost $3,000 and he wanted to make sure we got good pictures for that money. He said he never meant to hurt me. He said I was overreacting. He talked for 20 minutes straight, barely stopping for breath. I watched him and didn't say anything. Finally, he stopped and asked if I was going to respond. I told Dennis that asking your partner to lose weight for photos wasn't nervousness. It was cruelty disguised as concern. I said his inability to understand that proved we shouldn't get married. His face got red. His voice got loud enough that other customers looked over. He asked why I was punishing him for caring about our wedding day. He said he was trying to make things special for both of us. He said I was being unreasonable and stubborn. I stood up while he was still talking. I walked out of the coffee shop and got in my car and drove away. My phone buzzed with texts from him, but I didn't read them. I was done explaining myself to someone who refused to understand. I checked my work email Monday morning and found a message from the conference organizer. The annual professional development conference was scheduled for next month. I scrolled through the attendee list and saw Dennis's name 3 rows below mine. My stomach twisted. I had registered for this conference 6 months ago, back when we were still together and planning our future. Now the idea of spending 3 days in the same hotel made me want to delete my registration entirely. I opened a new email to ask about being reassigned to a different session, but stopped halfway through typing. Dennis already took 4 years of my life and influenced every decision I made during that time. He was not going to take professional opportunities from me too. I deleted what I had written and composed a different message. I asked the organizer if Dennis and I could be placed in different workshop sessions since we worked in related departments, and it would be better for our company if we attended different tracks. The organizer responded within an hour saying she would make sure we had minimal overlap. I felt relieved and also proud that I had advocated for myself instead of just disappearing to make things easier. I had a therapy session with Maya that afternoon. She asked how I was handling the separation, and I told her about the conference situation. Then I mentioned something that had been bothering me. I said I kept thinking about the wedding planning and how Dennis made every single decision. Maya asked me to list what I had actually chosen for the wedding. I sat there trying to remember. The venue was his choice because he liked the architecture. The caterer was his choice because he wanted a specific menu. The band was his choice because he heard them at his cousin's wedding. The colors were his choice because navy and gold were his college colors. The guest list was mostly his family and coworkers. I had picked my dress, but even that decision happened with his mother present making comments about what would photograph well. Maya asked what I wanted for the wedding. I realized I had no idea. I never thought about it because Dennis seemed so excited about everything that I just went along with his plans. Maya pointed out that this was a pattern. She said Dennis made decisions for us without actually consulting me, and I accepted it because I thought that was what compromise looked like. But compromise meant both people had input. What we had was Dennis deciding and me agreeing, because disagreeing felt like being difficult. I left therapy feeling like someone had turned on a light in a room I had been sitting in for 4 years. I could finally see all the furniture I had been tripping over in the dark. Imogen called that night to say she found a studio apartment that was available immediately. She sent me photos, and the place was tiny. The kitchen was basically a hot plate and a mini fridge. The bathroom was so small you could sit on the toilet and wash your hands in the sink at the same time. The rent was $200 more than my half of the current apartment. But it was available now, and it was mine alone. I told Imogen I would take it. She picked me up Saturday morning with her truck, and we loaded my stuff. I did not have much because most of the furniture belonged to Dennis, or we had bought it together. I took my clothes and books and kitchen supplies and the small desk I had brought into the relationship. Imogen helped me carry everything up 3 flights of stairs because the building did not have an elevator. We spent the afternoon setting up my new space. I put my bed against the wall and my desk under the window. I hung my clothes in the closet that was barely big enough to be called a closet. Then Imogen and I went to the home goods store and I bought curtains. I stood in the curtain aisle looking at all the options. Beige, gray, white, navy. Then I saw bright yellow curtains with a pattern that looked like sunshine. Dennis would have hated them. His mother would have said they were too loud. I bought them immediately. Imogen helped me hang them, and when we finished, the whole apartment looked different. Brighter, happier. Mine. I looked around at this small, expensive space that I had chosen without considering anyone else's opinion, and felt something I had not felt in years. I felt free. I went grocery shopping Sunday afternoon at the store near my new apartment. I was reading labels in the pasta aisle when someone said my name. I looked up and saw Phineas pushing a cart toward me. He was Dennis's best man, or he was supposed to be before I canceled the wedding. He stopped his cart next to mine and asked how I was doing. I said I was fine and tried to move past him, but he stepped into my path. He said Dennis was really torn up about the breakup. He said his friend was not eating or sleeping and spent most of his time just sitting around looking miserable. He said maybe I should give Dennis another chance because everyone made mistakes and Dennis really loved me. I looked at Phineas and wondered what Dennis had told him about why we broke up. I asked Phineas if he knew what Dennis said to me. Phineas looked uncomfortable. He said Dennis mentioned something about wedding planning disagreements. I told Phineas that Dennis demanded I lose 30 pounds, so I would not look heavy in our wedding photos. Phineas's face changed. He said he did not know that. I said Dennis should be torn up about what he said to me, not about facing consequences for saying it. Phineas was quiet for a moment. Then he said he was sorry, and he did not realize that was what happened. He said if someone told him to lose weight for photos, he would have reacted the same way I did. I appreciated his honesty. I told him I needed to finish shopping, and he moved his cart out of my way. I met Felicia for coffee Tuesday morning before work. She looked at me with this expression I could not quite read. Then she said she heard something from another friend and wanted to tell me. She said Dennis's previous girlfriend also ended things suddenly. Nobody in their friend group knew why she left because she just stopped showing up to events, and Dennis said they grew apart. Felicia said she always thought it was weird how quickly that relationship ended. Now she wondered if Dennis did something similar to his ex. I went home that night and opened my laptop. I found Dennis's ex on social media after searching through his old photos. Her name was Rachel, and she lived 2 towns over. I looked at her profile for a long time, trying to decide if I should reach out. It felt strange to contact someone I did not know to ask about her relationship history, but I also wanted to know if Dennis had a pattern of this behavior, or if I was somehow special in bringing out this side of him. I sent her a message. I introduced myself and explained I had been engaged to Dennis until recently. I said I was reaching out because I heard their relationship ended suddenly, and I wondered if she would be willing to talk about her experience with him. I hit send before I could change my mind. Rachel responded the next day. She said she would be happy to meet and talk. We agreed to have lunch Saturday at a restaurant halfway between our towns. I got there first and sat at a table by the window. No, Rachel arrived 10 minutes later and I recognized her from her photos. She sat down across from me and we ordered food. Then she asked what happened between Dennis and me. I told her about the weight loss demand and his mother's involvement and how he laughed when I asked if he planned to lose weight too. Rachel nodded like none of this surprised her. She said Dennis pulled similar behavior with her. At first, he was wonderful and supportive. Then slowly he started making comments. He said her job was not prestigious enough and she should look for something better. He said her friends were holding her back from reaching her potential. He criticized how much time she spent with her family. Eventually, he started commenting on her appearance. He said she should wear more makeup. He said her clothes were too casual. He said she could stand to lose a few pounds and tone up. He always framed it as wanting her to be the best version of herself. Rachel said she tried for 6 months to become whatever version he wanted. She changed her hair and bought new clothes and joined a gym. But it was never enough. He always found something else that needed improvement. She finally left when she realized the best version would never be good enough because the point was not improvement. The point was control. I drove home from lunch with Rachel feeling validated and sad at the same time. Validated because her story proved I was not crazy or oversensitive. Dennis had done this before. He had a pattern of criticizing women and disguising it as care. But I also felt sad that I wasted 4 years on someone whose behavior was so predictable. If I had known about Rachel earlier, maybe I would have seen the signs sooner. Maybe I would have left before we got engaged and planned a wedding and built a life together that I now had to dismantle piece by piece. I called Maya from my car and told her about meeting Rachel. Maya listened and then said something that shifted my perspective. She said recognizing the pattern now prevented me from wasting more years. She said some people stayed in relationships like this for decades because they never got confirmation that the problem was real. I had that confirmation. I had proof that leaving was the right choice. That was worth celebrating even though it hurt. The professional conference arrived 3 weeks later. I checked into the hotel Thursday afternoon and immediately saw Dennis across the lobby. He was standing near the registration desk talking to someone from accounting. My stomach dropped even though I knew he would be there. I had prepared myself for this moment, but actually seeing him made everything feel too real. I turned toward the elevator hoping to avoid him, but Otto appeared next to me. He worked in my department and we had talked a few times at company events. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee before the first session. I said yes because having someone with me felt better than being alone. We went to the hotel coffee shop and Otto ordered us both lattes. He did not mention Dennis or ask about my personal life. He just talked about work projects and which conference sessions he planned to attend. His casual kindness helped me feel less alone. I realized I had been so focused on Dennis and the wedding and the breakup that I forgot I had other people in my life who cared about me. The first day of sessions went smoothly because the organizer kept her promise about separating Dennis and me. I did not see him again until the networking break Friday afternoon. I was talking to someone from another company when I saw Dennis walking toward me. My whole body tensed. But before he reached me, Otto stepped into his path. Otto asked Dennis about some work project in detail that required a long explanation. Dennis had to stop and answer because Otto was technically his colleague and ignoring him would be rude. I watched this happen and felt grateful. Otto kept Dennis occupied for 15 minutes talking about budget reports and timeline adjustments. By the time their conversation ended, I had moved to a different part of the room. I found Otto later near the refreshment table. I mouthed thank you and he just shrugged. He said everyone deserved colleagues who had their back. His comment made me realize I had more support than I thought. I had been so focused on what I lost when I left Dennis that I had not noticed what I still had. I got home from the conference Sunday evening and checked my mail. There was an envelope from a travel company. I opened it and found a payment notice for the honeymoon package Dennis had booked. The trip was supposed to happen in 2 months. The total cost was $6,000, and the notice said the full amount was due in 30 days because the package was non-refundable. I called Dennis immediately. He answered on the 3rd ring. I asked why he never canceled the honeymoon. He said he forgot about it with everything else going on. I said forgetting was not an excuse and he needed to handle this. Dennis said we should both pay half since we both benefited from booking it originally. I told him I was not paying for a honeymoon that was not happening because of his behavior. He said I was being unreasonable. I hung up and called the travel company myself. The representative said the booking was in Dennis's name and only he could make changes or cancellations. She said if payment was not received by the due date, they would send the account to collections. I sent Dennis a text with the payment deadline and told him this was his responsibility to handle. He did not respond. I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer the next week to sort out the financial mess Dennis created. The office was small and cluttered with file boxes stacked against every wall. The lawyer was a woman in her 50s who listened while I explained the honeymoon situation and the wedding deposits and the security deposit from our old apartment that Dennis still owed me half of. She took notes on a yellow legal pad and asked questions about what we had in writing. I showed her the lease from our old place and the email trail about the honeymoon booking and screenshots of texts where Dennis claimed I owed him money for wedding cancellations. She studied everything for 20 minutes before looking up. She said we could draft a clear division of debts that would offset what Dennis claimed I owed against what he actually owed me. The security deposit alone was $1,200, and Dennis never paid me back his half when we moved. That covered most of what he said I owed for the venue deposit. She typed up a document right there listing every shared expense and who was responsible for what. The honeymoon was entirely his responsibility since it was booked in his name, and I had asked him to cancel it. The wedding venue was split evenly since we both signed that contract. The other deposits fell into similar categories based on who signed what paperwork. When she finished, the document showed Dennis actually owed me $300 more than I owed him. Having it all written down in black and white made me feel like I could breathe properly for the first time in weeks. I paid her fee and left with copies of everything organized in a folder. My next therapy session with Maya focused on something she noticed and how I talked about the wedding planning. She asked why I let Dennis make almost every decision about our wedding. I said he seemed so excited and I wanted him to be happy. Maya asked what I wanted for the wedding. I sat there trying to remember if I had wanted anything specific. I could not think of a single detail I had advocated for. Maya asked if I felt grateful that Dennis wanted to marry me. The question hit something I had not wanted to examine. I said yes. I said I felt lucky that someone like him chose me. Maya asked what I meant by someone like him. I tried to explain that Dennis was confident and funny and successful, and I sometimes wondered why he picked me. Maya pointed out that I was also confident and funny and successful. I said it felt different. She asked how. I realized I had been performing gratitude for being chosen. Dennis made me feel like I should be thankful someone wanted to marry me. So I did not advocate for what I wanted because I was afraid of seeming difficult or ungrateful. Maya asked if I thought I deserved to have opinions about my own wedding. I said of course, but hearing myself say it made me realize I had not acted like I believed it. She said this pattern probably showed up in other parts of our relationship too. I thought about all the times I agreed to things I did not want, or stayed quiet when Dennis made decisions without asking me. The wedding was just the biggest example of how I had made myself smaller to keep him happy. I started running longer distances that week. My usual 3 miles felt too easy, so I pushed myself to 4, then 5, then 6. I found a yoga studio across town that offered advanced classes and signed up for unlimited monthly sessions. The classes were harder than what I was used to, and I liked that. I liked feeling my muscles shake and my breath come hard, and knowing I was getting stronger. Every mile I ran felt like shaking off the shame Dennis tried to put on me. He wanted me to change my body to meet his standards, but I was changing my body for myself now. I was getting faster and stronger in ways that had nothing to do with how I looked. The instructor at the yoga studio asked if I was training for something. I said I was training to feel like myself again. She smiled like she understood exactly what I meant. After class, I looked at myself in the studio mirror and saw someone who was taking up space without apologizing for it. My body was mine. It had always been mine. I had just forgotten that for a while. The truth about why Dennis and I broke up started spreading through our social circle around the same time. I did not tell many people the real reason, but Felicia told her boyfriend and he told someone else, and eventually the story got out. Some people ghosted me entirely. 3 mutual friends stopped responding to my texts and unfollowed me on social media. I figured they were siding with Dennis, or they did not believe me, or they thought I was making too big a deal out of his request. Other people reached out to say they always thought something was off about how he treated me. A woman from our book club sent me a long message saying she noticed Dennis often spoke over me in group settings, and she was glad I got away from him. A guy we knew from the gym said Dennis made comments about other women's bodies when I was not around, and it always made him uncomfortable. Each message revealed things people saw that I had explained away to myself. I felt stupid for not noticing and grateful that other people had been paying attention even when I was not. I met 3 friends for coffee 2 weeks later at a place downtown. These were people I had known since college, and I trusted them to be honest with me. We ordered drinks and sat at a corner table, and I asked them directly if they ever noticed Dennis saying anything weird about my appearance. They looked at each other before anyone answered. Finally, one of them said yes. She said Dennis made small critical comments about my appearance disguised as jokes. He would say things like I should try a new hairstyle or ask if I was really going to eat dessert, or mention that certain colors were not flattering on me. She said they all laughed uncomfortably at the time because they did not know what else to do. Another friend said Dennis once commented that I was lucky to have him because most guys his age wanted someone younger and thinner. She said she almost said something, but she was afraid of causing drama. The third friend admitted she thought about pulling me aside several times, but she did not know how to bring it up without sounding like she was interfering. I sat there realizing the red flags were visible to others even when I was explaining them away to myself. They apologized for not saying anything sooner. I told them it was not their fault. I was the one who needed to see it, and I finally did. Dennis sent me a long email 3 days after that coffee meeting. The subject line said, "We need to talk." The email was 12 paragraphs detailing everything he did right in our relationship, and how I was throwing it away over one mistake. He listed all the nice things he did for me over 4 years. He reminded me about the time he drove 6 hours to pick me up when my car broke down. He brought up the surprise birthday party he threw for me 2 years ago. He mentioned every gift he bought and every vacation we took and every time he supported me through something difficult. He said he made one comment about wanting me to look my best for our wedding, and I was using it to destroy everything we built together. He said I was being unfair and unreasonable and selfish. He said if I really loved him, I would forgive this one mistake and come back to him. I read the email 3 times. I drafted a response explaining why his request was not just one mistake, but a symptom of how he saw me. I deleted it and wrote a different response focusing on the pattern of control throughout our relationship. I deleted that too and wrote a third version that was just 2 sentences saying I was not coming back and he needed to respect my decision. I was about to send it when I called Maya instead. She asked me to read her the email. When I finished, she was quiet for a minute. Then she said his email was manipulation designed to make me doubt my decision. She said he was rewriting history to make himself the victim. She said the clearest boundary I could set was silence. She said not responding at all would show him I was done engaging with his version of reality. I thanked her and deleted all 3 drafts without sending any of them. A letter arrived at my new apartment a week later. I did not recognize the handwriting on the envelope. Inside was 3 pages of stationery with flowers printed around the borders. The letter was from Blythe. She somehow got my new address even though I had not given it to her. The letter said I was breaking her son's heart and ruining his life. She said Dennis was a good man who deserved a wife who appreciated him. She said I was being cruel by refusing to work things out over such a small issue. She said women should be grateful for male attention and willing to maintain themselves to keep it. She said her generation understood that marriage required compromise and sacrifice, and my generation was too selfish to make relationships work. She said I would regret this decision when I was older and alone and realized I had thrown away my chance at a family. She said Dennis told her I refused to even discuss his concerns about the wedding photos, and that proved I did not really love him. The letter revealed more about her values than I ever knew. I read 2 pages before I stopped. I did not need to know what else she thought about me or my choices or my generation. I walked the letter directly to the trash can in my kitchen and threw it away without finishing it. A friend from work got married the following month, and I almost did not go to the wedding. I was afraid it would hurt to watch someone else get married when my own wedding was supposed to happen in 3 months. But I had already RSVP'd yes and bought a gift, so I put on a dress and drove to the venue. The ceremony was outside in a garden. The bride looked radiant and happy. Her groom looked at her like she was perfect exactly as she was. He cried when she walked down the aisle. During the vows, he said he loved every part of her and could not wait to spend his life making her as happy as she made him. I felt relief instead of jealousy. I felt grateful I did not marry Dennis. I felt certain I made the right choice. At the reception, I danced with other guests and ate cake and celebrated love that looked like what love should be. When I drove home that night, I felt surprisingly okay. Otto asked me to grab lunch the next week. We went to a sandwich shop near the office and sat outside even though it was getting cold. He said he wanted to tell me something. He said he went through a similar situation with an ex who constantly criticized him. She told him he needed to dress better and work out more and be more social. She said she was just trying to help him improve himself. He said it took him 2 years to rebuild his confidence after that relationship. He said he still sometimes heard her voice in his head, telling him he was not good enough. Sharing our experiences helped me feel less isolated in what I was going through. Otto said the hardest part was realizing how much of himself he had changed to make her happy. He said he stopped doing hobbies she thought were boring and started pretending to like things she liked. He said by the time they broke up, he barely recognized himself. I told him I understood that feeling completely. We finished our sandwiches and went back to work, and I felt grateful to know someone else who got it. 5 months after the breakup, Dennis showed up at my apartment building. I was coming home from a run when I saw him standing by the entrance. My whole body went tense. He said he had been in therapy and understood now what he did wrong. He said his therapist helped him see how his comments about my weight were harmful and controlling. He asked if we could try again. He promised he had changed and would never make me feel that way again. For a moment, I was tempted by the familiarity and the apology I had wanted. Part of me wanted to believe people could change. Part of me missed the good parts of our relationship. Part of me was tired of being alone. But then I looked at him standing there and I remembered everything. I remembered how he laughed when I asked if he would lose weight too. I remembered his mother's letter about maintaining myself. I remembered 4 years of making myself smaller to fit what he wanted. I told Dennis I appreciated that he was working on himself, but I was not interested in getting back together. Some things could not be unsaid. Some trust could not be rebuilt. He stared at me like I had spoken a different language. He said I was being unfair by not giving him a chance to prove he was different. His voice got louder. He said he went to therapy for me. He said he did the work, and I owed it to him to at least try. The anger in his tone proved he had not actually changed at all. A person who really understood what he did wrong would not demand I reward him for basic self-improvement. I stayed calm. I told him I wished him well, but my decision was final. Dennis tried to hug me goodbye and I stepped back. The hurt on his face almost made me feel guilty. Almost. Then I remembered I was not responsible for managing his emotions anymore. He left without another word. I closed the door and sat on my floor. My hands were shaking. My whole body felt shaky, but my mind felt certain. I pulled out my phone and texted Maya that I held my boundary, and it felt terrible and right at the same time. She responded immediately with a proud face emoji and told me that was exactly what growth looked like. 6 months after the breakup, the final paperwork for dividing our shared assets got completed. I met with the lawyer at his office downtown. He spread the documents across his desk and showed me where to sign. Everything was itemized and fair. The savings account split exactly in half. The furniture we bought together divided by who kept what. The security deposit from our old apartment calculated and allocated. I signed my name on every page. Each signature felt like closing a door that needed to be closed. I walked out of that office officially financially independent from Dennis. I had less money than I would have if we stayed together. Our combined incomes had made life easier in practical ways, but I had more peace than I had in years. The trade was worth it. I drove home and transferred my half of the savings into my personal account. Watching that number appear in my balance made something inside me settle. I was building my own life now. The promotion came through 3 weeks later. My manager called me into her office and told me the directors were impressed with my work at the conference. They created a new position and wanted me to fill it. The raise was significant enough that I could afford a better apartment or start saving for things I actually wanted. I accepted immediately. That night, I celebrated with Felicia and Imogen at our favorite restaurant. We ordered appetizers and dessert and split a bottle of wine. Felicia kept saying she knew I would get it. Imogen raised her glass and said she was proud of me. Otto stopped by my desk the next morning to congratulate me. He mentioned he put in a good word with management. He said my work during the conference impressed several directors, and they asked him about me specifically. I thanked him for believing in me. I realized I was building a professional reputation that had nothing to do with any relationship. My career was mine. My success was mine. Nobody could take that away. I used some of the money I would have spent on the wedding to book a solo vacation. 1 week in Colorado hiking and reading and eating whatever I wanted. I had never traveled alone before. Dennis always wanted to go places together, and his idea of vacation involved tours and schedules and restaurant reservations made weeks in advance. I booked a cabin near Rocky Mountain National Park with no plan except to do whatever felt right each day. The first morning I woke up and made coffee and sat on the porch watching the sun come up over the mountains. Nobody asked me what I wanted to do. Nobody suggested activities I should enjoy. I decided to hike a trail I found on a map at the visitor center. I spent 4 hours walking through pine forests and across streams. I stopped whenever I wanted to take photos or just sit and breathe. I ate lunch at a diner and ordered pancakes at 2 in the afternoon because I felt like it. Every decision was mine alone. Where I ate breakfast, how I spent my afternoons, when I went to bed. The freedom felt like finally breathing fully after years of holding my breath. I hiked different trails each day. I read 3 books. I ate at restaurants without worrying about anyone else's preferences. On the last night, I sat by a fire outside my cabin and felt settled in a way I had not felt in 4 years. I came back from vacation feeling different, lighter, more myself. I unpacked my suitcase and put my hiking boots in the closet, and realized I had not checked to see if Dennis viewed my social media in over a week. I opened the app out of curiosity and saw he had not looked at my profile in weeks either. The mental space he used to occupy had shrunk to almost nothing. I was filling that space with hobbies and friendships and career goals that were completely my own. I started taking a pottery class on Tuesday nights. I joined a book club that met monthly at a coffee shop downtown. I made plans with coworkers outside of work. I was building a life that reflected who I actually was, instead of who someone else needed me to be. Maya and I discussed ending therapy at our next session. She said I was doing so much better. She pointed out how much I had grown in recognizing my worth. I could see it too. 6 months ago, I questioned whether I made the right choice leaving Dennis. Now I knew with complete certainty that I did. Maya said I developed tools to set boundaries and trust my instincts. She said those tools would serve me in every relationship going forward. I told her I wanted to keep seeing her but less often. We agreed on monthly sessions instead of weekly. I wanted to maintain the progress I made. I wanted to keep working on choosing partners who added to my life instead of requiring me to make myself smaller. I started casually dating again in early spring. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and walks in the park. I noticed differences in how I showed up immediately. I stated my preferences clearly. When a guy suggested a restaurant I did not like, I said so and offered an alternative. When someone made a joke that was not funny, I did not laugh to be polite. When something felt off, I ended dates early without apologizing or explaining. I went on a date with a man who spent the entire time talking about his ex-girlfriend. I finished my coffee and told him I did not think we were a good match. He seemed surprised, but I did not care. I trusted my instincts instead of overriding them to be agreeable. It felt powerful to know what I wanted and ask for it. Imogen called me one Saturday morning and asked if we could meet for breakfast. We went to a place near her apartment that made good omelets. She told me she was proud of how I handled everything with Dennis. She said watching me leave a bad situation gave her courage to set better boundaries in her own life. Her boss had been taking advantage of her for months, asking her to work late without extra pay, expecting her to answer emails on weekends, making her feel guilty when she said no. Imogen finally told him she would not be available outside her scheduled hours anymore. Her boss was not happy, but he accepted it. She said seeing me choose myself helped her realize she could do the same. Her comment made me realize my choice to leave had effects beyond just my own healing. It rippled outward. That meant something. I ran a half marathon 9 months after the breakup. I trained for 12 weeks, 3 runs during the week and 1 long run every Sunday. I pushed myself further each week. My body got stronger. My mind got clearer. Race day arrived cold and sunny. I stood at the starting line with hundreds of other runners. The gun went off and we started moving. The first few miles felt easy. My legs were fresh and my breathing was steady. Around mile 7, my legs started to hurt. I kept going. Mile 10 felt hard. My body wanted to stop. I told myself I could do 3 more miles. I had trained for this. I had built this strength myself. I crossed the finish line at 13.1 miles and someone put a medal around my neck. My legs were shaking. My lungs were burning. I felt amazing. Crossing that finish line felt like proof of how far I had come. My body carried me 13.1 miles on strength I built for myself. Not to meet anyone else's standards. Not to look good in photos. Just to see what I was capable of. I was proud of what I accomplished. Otto invited me to a barbecue at his place 2 weeks after the half marathon. He said some friends were getting together and I should come meet them. I showed up with a bottle of wine and felt nervous walking up to his apartment building. I did not know what to expect from his friend group. The door opened and Otto introduced me to 6 people sitting around his living room. They were warm right away. They asked about my running and my job and what I like to do for fun. Nobody mentioned how I looked. Nobody commented on what I ate when we moved to the patio for burgers. One woman talked about training for a triathlon and asked if I wanted to join her running group. A guy told stories about his terrible dating experiences that made everyone laugh. I sat there eating potato salad and drinking beer and realized this was what normal felt like. People who did not think bodies were topics for public discussion. People who cared about what you did and thought instead of how you appeared. I went home that night feeling lighter. I had found friends who liked me for reasons that had nothing to do with my appearance. Rachel sent me a message 3 weeks later asking how I was doing. I stared at her name on my phone screen for a minute before responding. We agreed to meet for coffee on Saturday morning. I got there early and ordered a latte. Rachel walked in looking happy and healthy. We hugged and sat down and she asked about my life since the breakup. I told her about therapy and the promotion and the half marathon. She listened and nodded and said she was proud of me for leaving. She told me about her own healing process after Dennis. She went to therapy for 6 months. She joined a book club and started painting again. She learned to recognize red flags early. Then she met someone new. Someone who never once suggested she change anything about herself. Someone who loved her exactly as she was. She showed me photos of her engagement ring. Her face glowed when she talked about her partner. She said finding someone who celebrated her instead of critiquing her taught her what love should feel like. Her happiness gave me hope. If she could heal and find someone better, then maybe I could too. I moved into a larger 1-bedroom apartment in early summer. The promotion salary meant I could afford more space and a better neighborhood. I spent 2 weeks decorating it exactly how I wanted. I bought a bright blue couch because I loved the color. I hung art that made me smile instead of worrying if guests would like it. I arranged the furniture to create a reading nook by the window. Every choice reflected my taste without compromise. I did not have to consider what Dennis would think or what his mother would approve of. The apartment was mine alone. Coming home after work felt like returning to myself. I would unlock the door and see my yellow curtains and blue couch and feel proud of the space I created. This was what independence looked like. Dennis sent a text 10 months after the breakup. I saw his name on my phone and my stomach dropped for just a second. The message said he was dating someone new. He hoped we could be friendly if we ran into each other. He wanted things to be comfortable between us. I read it twice and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a mild sense of closure. I typed a polite response saying I wished him well and preferred to keep our interactions professional only. Then I deleted his number from my phone. I did not need that door even slightly open anymore. Whatever we had was finished. I was building something new. Felicia's birthday party happened on a warm Saturday in June. She rented a rooftop space downtown and invited 40 people. I showed up wearing a dress I bought specifically because I loved it. I walked in and saw friends from different parts of my life mixing together. Otto was there talking to Imogen. Some people from my running group stood by the bar. I grabbed a drink and joined conversations and laughed at jokes and made plans for dinner next week. Halfway through the party, I realized something. I was genuinely happy. Not just okay or healing, but actually happy with my life. I was not thinking about what I lost. I was only thinking about what I was building. The realization made me smile so wide that Felicia asked what was so funny. I told her I was just happy. She hugged me and said she could tell. Maya and I had our last regular session in July. She asked what I learned from this experience. I thought about it for a minute before answering. I told her I learned that love should not require me to change my body or make my voice smaller. The right person would celebrate who I am instead of critiquing who I am not. I learned that I am worth that kind of love. I learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. I learned that leaving a bad situation takes courage, but staying in one takes even more. Maya smiled and said I had done important work. She said I could call her if I ever needed support, but she thought I had the tools to handle whatever came next. I left her office feeling ready. I looked at old photos from my relationship with Dennis one night in August. I scrolled through pictures on my phone showing us at restaurants and parks and parties. I expected to feel sad, but instead I felt grateful. Grateful I discovered his conditional love before we got married. Grateful I had the courage to leave when I saw who he really was. Grateful for the year of growth that taught me to value myself. Those 4 years were not wasted. They taught me what I did not want. They showed me the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves the idea of controlling you. I closed the photo app and deleted the album. I did not need to look back anymore. I met someone new at a dinner party in September. My friend from the running group invited me to her place for food and games. I walked in and saw a guy I did not know helping in the kitchen. My friend introduced us. He asked about my running when we sat down for dinner. He seemed genuinely interested in my half-marathon training. We talked for 2 hours about books and travel and our careers. He told me about his job and his family and his plans to hike the Appalachian Trail someday. He did not mention my appearance once. The conversation felt easy and equal in a way I had forgotten was possible. When the party ended, he asked for my number. I gave it to him, feeling curious about where this might go. He texted 3 days later asking me to dinner. I stared at the message, feeling excited and nervous, but not afraid. I knew what red flags looked like now. I trusted myself to walk away if I saw them. That self-trust was the best thing I got from leaving Dennis. I typed yes and suggested a restaurant. We made plans for Friday night. I put my phone down and smiled. This felt different. This felt right. A year after I took off that engagement ring, I was training for a full marathon. I ran 4 times a week and did strength training twice a week. My body was strong. My mind was clear. I booked a trip to Iceland for October. I wanted to see the northern lights and hike through lava fields. Work was going well. I got another small promotion and more responsibility. I was building a life where I took up space without apologizing. A life where my worth was not tied to how I looked in someone else's photos. I thought about the night Dennis asked me to lose weight, and how small he tried to make me feel. I thought about taking off that ring and choosing myself. I had never been more proud of who I was becoming.